Michael.
Hey, Elie, Mystal. Good to talk to you. Again. I had a two-part question. Hey, I'm all right. I had a two-part question here. When you talked about Democrats didn't do enough to protect voting, I'm paraphrasing you, protect voting rights, to expand voting rights, things of this nature. There's a piece from BrennanCenter.org, Brennan Center for Justice, from August 2024 that talks about how voting laws have changed in battleground states since 2020. And they looked at 9 battleground states. One of them was Michigan, where I live. And in Michigan, we had 10 laws that expanded voting rights. But we had, Democrats controlling the House, the Senate, and our Governor Gretchen Whitmer. And in Nevada, you had 6 laws that expanded voting rights, whereas other states controlled by Republicans, they had laws to make it harder to vote. So what were some of the things that you think Democrats should have done to protect voting rights and expand voting rights? And the second part is the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. It passed the House of Representatives, but in the Senate, you had 16, all 50 Republicans voted against it in the Senate, including 16 sitting Republicans who voted to reauthorize the 1965 Voting Rights Act in 2005, 2006. And I was just wanting to get your expert opinion on what we could have done to try to get that forced through the Senate. It did pass the House of Representatives.
Right. So
and no Republicans in the House voted for it either. Let me just say that too.
Right. So on the first question, I think what the Democrats should have done is very similar to what the Republicans are about to do, and used federal power to standardize voting across the nation, right? So yes, I agree. Michigan actually did a pretty good job of not retrenching on voting rights because it had 3 Democratic control of all 3 branches of its government, right? But that was not true all around the country. And even though it's true, even though some states are better than other states, I think part of the problem when you really get into like voter mobilization, right, is that it is confusing because how you vote changes radically depending on where you live. So you can't have a nationally targeted, campaign around just the nuts and bolts of getting people to the polls, because it's wildly different everywhere else, depending on where you live, right? So like I am an expert on how you vote in New York City, right? How you vote in New York State. I know that very well. I have no idea how you vote in Jersey, right? It's because it's completely freaking different, right? And so there was no way for me as a national commentator or whatever to really make to do the bullhorning of, well, guys in New Jersey, what you got to do is, because I don't know. I mean, I educated myself, but you know what I mean? Like, I can't make broad statements because we don't use federal power. What the Republicans are about to do, I forget which Lara, whatever, one of them. I think it's Lara Trump. I get them, I don't want to Morpheus. Right. Whatever. One of the Laras was talking about how they want to use federal power to institute voter ID and standardize elections and limit early voting and do all these things from the federal seat of government. Now, when Democrats try to do it, the Republicans scream about the 10th Amendment, but I promise you they won't be talking about the 10th Amendment and federalism when Republicans try to do it, right? So those are the kinds of federalized laws that could have made voting easier, not just for Michigan, but for everybody, and then made it easier for you to explain to people in Michigan, in Arizona, in Nevada, in Florida, how you actually vote, right? The John Lewis Voting Rights, and that dovetails into the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which was one of the federal laws that could have done that, right? And so when you ask me what else could we have done to make sure that law passed over the objection of Manchin and Sinema, this is where I say, and you can check the tape, I said this in real time, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act was a shut down the government bill. You don't pass anything until after what happened on January 6th. After the attack on democracy, that is the first bill you pass, and you don't let the government function until it passes it. That is what I would have done. I know Inflation Reduction Act, I know that we had other priorities. No, that was the first and only that should have been the first priority and only priority of the Biden administration, because you do not have a democracy without the franchise. You just don't, as we're seeing right now. And the political uplift to get the John Lewis Voting Rights Act done was in the aftermath of January 6th. You shut down the government. You don't let anything else come across the floor until they pass that. You attach that bill to every single budget that you dare to try to pass. You should be able to.
Yes, you do exactly what Congressman Powell, Adam Clayton Powell, did when it was called the Powell Amendment. He attached it to every bill. But again, this is the difference between. This is what I keep saying. If you want to compare parties, Democrats are playing by a set of traditional, accepted rules. Republicans are playing a game where there are no rules.
Right.
And their whole deal is, we don't care. We will be as ruthless as we need to be because we are trying to, one, get power, use power to cement power. I was one of the people who publicly said that President-elect Joe Biden should have picked former Alabama Senator Doug Jones to be his attorney general. I thought he was going to be a hell of a lot more aggressive. Merrick Garland will go down as one of the worst attorney generals because of his abject failure to hold Donald Trump accountable.
Yes. Merrick Garland is the worst pick in two successive Democratic administrations, and that's got to be a record of some sort, right? Because he was the worst person that Obama could have picked to replace Antonin Scalia in 2016, and he was the worst person Joe Biden could have picked to be the Attorney General, and Joe Biden stuck with him even after it became apparent that Merrick Garland was not up to the job, was not up to the task, was not up to the moment. And Merrick Garland is one of the true villains of this cycle. Merrick Garland is one of the true bad guys that brought us Trump to Electric Boogaloo, right? Like that's just reality. But in response to some of the things I was hearing while I was in the waiting room, the question of whether or not Trump is above the law, he is. Trump is above the law. He shouldn't be. I disagree. I agree with everything said. It's not in the Constitution. It's not how this country is supposed to run. But it is how it runs. He is above the law. He won. He got away with it. And at some point, I almost need people to see it, right? I almost need them to understand what this country is, understand the depravity of this country, understand the privilege white people enjoy. Because I think as I, pour through the election results like all of y'all, I think one of the kind of macro lessons that I'm getting is that people really don't get it. People really don't get people don't get what they've done. People don't get what's about to happen. People are in denial. People are in kind of Pollyanna land. Nah, bro. The president, Trump, is above nobody else, but Trump can do whatever he wants, and he will do whatever he wants. And there ain't no law coming to save us. There ain't no attorney general. There ain't no guardrails coming to constrain him. The only thing that stops him is organized, desperate resistance. I don't mean wearing a pink pussy hat, right? The time for that is over. I don't mean hashtag not my president. I don't mean that crap. I mean the kind of resistance that our ancestors put down. That's what it's going to take to get this country back. And it ain't going to happen in 4 years. It ain't going to happen in 8 years. You're talking about, and I've been talking to my family about this, you're talking about planting seeds in a garden that we will not live to see bear fruit. All right? We're talking about needing a plan to take this country back in 2050, in 2060, because we are entering a time of consequences. And so, yeah, sentence him, don't sentence him. if it makes people feel better to put that marker down, that at least he was sentenced, fine. I don't have a problem with that, obviously. But the reality is these people are punks. The people who were supposed to hold Trump accountable are punks. They're afraid of him. They're afraid of his movement. They're afraid of his people. And so there are no guardrails. There are no restraints. There are no restrictions on what this man can do. He is an emperor in all but name.
Oh, absolutely. And it is just unbelievable to watch these people cower and be cowards. To be flat out just cowards.
Yeah.
And he's going to stay, and he's just sitting there laughing. And his supporters, they literally don't care. They can talk all day about law and order. They don't give a damn about law and order when it applies to them. Only everybody else. Oh, follow the law. You must come in this country fairly. But hey, if you're still stolen documents, you're good. If you're sitting here and lie about your properties and the value, guess what? You're good. You can run a fake foundation. You're good. A fake university. It's all good. And then the Supreme Court goes, guess what? You've got immunity, so you can do whatever the hell you want as long as you cloak it in presidential action.
You guys were talking about how he's going to pardon the January 6th domestic terrorists, and that is true. And I just need people listening to understand what that means, because that's how people like us get killed. Straight up. Yep. Because by pardoning these people, what he is telling his own violent supporters, and if I want to be kind, I'll say that not all of his supporters are gun-toting violent idiots, but enough of them are. And what he's telling the most violent strand of his supporters is to go out and do violence, and you will be forgiven. Go out and do violence against the people that I have told you to hate, and you will be forgiven. We already know they think that. We already know that when there's a mass shooter at a Hispanic nightclub or a black church, when the cops come, the mass shooter expects to be embraced by the police. We have documentary evidence of mass shooters expecting the police are on their side, and that was before this election. What are they gonna think now? Speaking of the police, what are the police gonna think now? Of the thousands and thousands and thousands of law enforcement officers who voted for Donald Trump, sure, who voted for a convicted felon over a prosecutor, of the law enforcement people who were able to vote for a felon instead of a prosecutor, sure, some of them might have been concerned about inflation, but some of them weren't. Some of them, I'm sorry, were not motivated by economic anxiety. Some of them voted for the felon over the prosecutor because some of them want to crack black skulls. And what Trump has said is that he wants to give the cops the kind of absolute immunity that he himself was given by the Supreme Court. So what does that mean for us? Because it turns out, folks, I don't get to know what the cop was motivated by, what the Trump voting cop was motivated by when I drive past him in my car. I don't get to know whether I'm being, the patrolmen in my community, I don't get to know if they were inspired by economic anxiety or something else. And these are the people who will feel particularly empowered to do violence against us. And so while everybody else is kind of still in the not everybody else, but while most of the kind of Democratic poobahs and talking heads are busy doing the what are the lessons from the election? And who are we going to run in 2028? Is it going to be Gavin Newsom? I don't know, bro. While they're having that discussion, I'm having discussions with my family and my kids about whether or not we're even safe to stay here. I'm having discussions with my family and my colleagues about whether or not I can even continue to do what I do in a safe environment. given the not just the obvious state-sponsored paramilitary forces that are now trained on us, on our community, but from the threats of any violent MAGA asshole with a gun who feels empowered by this violent president. That's the story of this election that we're still trying to work through. I'm not even worried about 2028. I'm trying to make it to 2028.
So Elie, you talked about how there's this rightward shift, and let's talk about that because when people look at the 2020 election, I kept telling folks you can't look at 2020 the same way you look at 2016 and any other election because it was a COVID election. Rules were changed, and guess what? 2020 actually showed what democracy should look like. How you make it easier for folks to vote. Well, Republicans got pissed off, rolled a lot of that stuff back, and we saw this election being a contraction election. How they attacked ballot drop boxes, how they attacked early voting, all the rules they put in place. And so, again, Republicans admit it. They win when fewer folks vote. They admit they lose when more people vote.
All the voter suppression techniques work. And here's one of my kind of 2024 takeaways that people aren't ready for yet, at least based on what I'm hearing from the poobahs. But I do think that when we look back at this point in history, to the extent that people are allowed to write and read history books in the future, when we look back at this point, we will look at the period of the Joe Biden presidency from 2020 to 2024 as a huge missed opportunity, right? That the when given power, albeit briefly, when Biden had control of the White House, the Senate, and the House, for that brief moment, even having to deal with the traitors that are Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, what we will understand is that Joe Biden and the Democrats, and again, I blame Manchin and Sinema as much as I blame anybody, simply failed to do the things necessary to protect democracy from the kind of authoritarian takeover that we are now going to have to live through, right? And yes, that to me starts with Merrick Garland, starts with law enforcement and Merrick Garland's inability and unwillingness to hold Trump. And we're just, I hate to get distracted, but we're so focused on Merrick Garland's failure to hold Trump accountable. Let's not forget, there are a whole bunch of January 6th supporting politicians and Congress people that Merrick Garland also let off the hook, right? Marjorie Taylor Greene also won re-election on Tuesday, and she shouldn't have been allowed to run either. But anyway, in addition to Merrick Garland and his abject failure as a professional person, we will see that the Democrats did nothing to secure the voting rights that allow Democrats to be elected in the first place. They did nothing to restore the Voting Rights Act to its pre-John Roberts glory. They did nothing to stop the states from changing the voting rules, decreasing the times for early voting, making it harder to mail in your ballots, contracting the number of polling places, increasing the lines and the hurdles that people face in order to go vote. They did nothing to stop that at the state level. They did nothing to stop the Republican takeover of state boards of elections. This election wasn't stolen in the sense that there absolutely was not some kind of precinct level I'm going to take the votes and stuff it in my ear. No, that's not how this election went on. This election was free and fair based on the rules. The rules themselves were broken, and the Republicans broke them, and Democrats did nothing to fix them. And that is also why they lost. I don't blame Kamala Harris for not being able to inspire an extra 20 million people to crawl over broken glass to vote for her. I blame Democrats for allowing Republicans to break the glass and put it in their way, frankly. And that is also the story of our times. It is a Democratic Party that has lost basic self-preservation instincts. Remember, we were sitting here in 2020 after, in the transition period. What were we talking about? To deal with the Senate, right? We weren't talking about like, oh, how are we going to get Manchin to? We didn't even know Kristen Sinema was going to go full, Karen. But we weren't talking about Joe Manchin. We were talking about adding Puerto Rico as a state. We were talking about adding DC as a state. Where the hell did those bills go? Notice how that, you don't think that would have helped to have 10 extra electoral votes and 4 extra senators just now? Yeah, you don't think that might have helped somebody? But no, Democrats didn't do that. No, we didn't have the time to do that. No, we didn't have the focus to do that. And so we are where we are. Like, Roland, you know this because you've seen me offline. I got people asking me in the past week, what are we going to do about the courts, Elie? What are we going to do about the justice system, Elie? And my response, and it's not a flip response, but it is an angry response. My response is, well, what you could do is go back 4 years and listen to me then. Because 4 years ago was our chance to stop this. 3 years ago was our chance to stop this. Now it is what it is.
Questions for Elie from our panel. Kelly, you first.
I'm trying not to cry, frankly, because I've been following Elie for years. And we've met, and he knows how much I just deeply love his rhetoric and his writings. I just feel broken. I feel like I did all I could do, and it wasn't enough, because it wasn't enough. So I guess my question is there anything we can do at this point? My initial reaction is no, but outside of ranting and raving on social media, which might be the last safe space that we can do such a thing, what else is there left to do?
Well, it depends upon where on social media we actually do
that part.
Which is one, before I go to Elie, which is one of the reasons why I really hope black folks move over to fan base. I hope Isaac Hayes develops a Twitter style or thread style functionality to the app as well, because Elon Musk has turned Twitter X into a right-wing cesspool, and that's all it is going to remain. And so that's what needs to happen. But Elie, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm going to wrap those two responses into one, right? Because one of the, I think Musk is actually a big part of this, right? It's Elon Musk, it's Peter Thiel, and it's David Sachs. And what do those men have in common? They're all white South Africans, right? And I don't mean white South Africans in like, oh, post-apartheid, playing rugby with Matt Damon white South Africans. I mean white South Africans whose financial base comes from their participation in apartheid. That ain't an accident. And I think that when we look at the future and we look at how these three white South African men have incredible access to power, have incredible access to the structures of our government, we have to remember that apartheid, that South African apartheid, was not merely a moral failing of white folks. I mean, it was obviously a moral failing of white folks, but it wasn't merely a moral failing. It was a structure. It was a system that they implemented to make permanent white minority rule over a larger and more populous and more active black majority. That was the point of apartheid, right? It wasn't just people being mean. And that is the kind of structure they're going to try to put on us here. That is the yoke that they have fashioned for us here. And so, to Kelly's question, like, is there enough, right? Is there enough to be done? There is, but that's what we have to understand what we're fighting against now, right? Because the fight is different now, right? The fight 2 weeks ago was where I want better democratic self-government and a justice system that works for everybody. And no, we're not. That's that. We lost that fight, right? Now comes the fight to maintain our humanity and dignity in the face of oppression. That is the only fight now. Is there enough effort? Is there enough soul? Is there enough passion in our community to do it? Hell yeah, there are. Because this will not be the first time that these people have tried to take away our dignity and our humanity. And the history has shown they have lost every time. They can beat us. They can kill us. They can rape us. They can steal us. They cannot defeat us. But we got to look after us. We got to be there for us. And we have to understand our fight is for not our freedoms, which are nice, but our dignity and our humanity is our fight now. And we can do that. We can fight for that, and we can win that fight. And the freedoms will come back later. Well, I mean, like I said, we are not building for 2028. We're building for 2050. We're building for 2060. We're building so that our children can start, right? Can join the fight where our parents join the fight. We gotta. That's the goal now, I think.
Matt?
Yeah, I want to first say, Elie, I read your piece in The Nation, and I think you said in 2 sentences what I have tried to say inartfully when you said he is them and he tells them that being what they are is okay. I thought that was profound because that's precisely what has been behind what I've seen with not only a lot of the rhetoric, but a lot of the support, because he's emboldened people who would otherwise not have the confidence to say some of the hateful things that they believe. He's put that on the front stage. So I first want to commend you because you said it beautifully. But my question for you is, what do you think is the most effective and immediate form of resistance that we have, and where does it lie? Is it on the local level? Is it, in organizing a certain way behind a certain thing? I'd love to get your insight on that.
I mean, Matt, man, if I knew, I'd be telling you. Like, I'm not. I don't know yet. I'm still trying to work that out for myself. Again, I'm still very focused on like personal safety and those kinds of concerns. I don't know yet what the first line is. My instinct is where yours is. My instinct is that it's local, right? My instinct is that it's not national. It is through the local structures of the government where we still have, to use a white South African term, we still have some form of home rule. And we need to exercise our home rule as much as possible. Like after 2016, I'm going to become a huge fan of federalism and states' rights for a bit, because that's going to help me right now. But I do think that even more so than those concerns, it is about the first line of defense is within our own communities and protecting each other and building each other back up, right? I think that valence can't be lost. I mean, we always say when we come on the shows like Roland's, right? We always say, ain't nobody for us but us, right? We always have that in the back of our mind, but that almost like has to be like in the front of our mind right now, right? Because we are the only people who are going to care. I mean, that's what you get from the exit polls, right? We're the only people that care about us. We're the only people who give a damn about us. And that has to be front of mind with all of our interactions, with all of our resistance or whatever you want to call it. Whatever power we have to turn that power into power that's going to protect us first, because ain't nobody else going to do that. We know that now.
Michael?
Hey, Elie Mystal. Good to talk to you again. I had a two-part question. Hey, I'm all right. I had a two-part question here. When you talked about Democrats didn't do enough to protect voting, I'm paraphrasing you, protect voting rights, right. To expand voting rights, things of this nature. There's a piece from BrennanCenter.org, Brennan Center for Justice, from August 2024 that talks about how voting laws have changed in battleground states since 2020. And they looked at 9 battleground states. One of them was Michigan, where I live. And in Michigan, we had 10 laws that expanded voting rights, but we had, Democrats controlling the House, the Senate, and our Governor Gretchen Whitmer. And in Nevada, you had 6 laws that expanded voting rights, whereas other states controlled by Republicans, they had laws to make it harder to vote. So what were some of the things that you think Democrats should have done to protect voting rights and expand voting rights? And the second part is the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. It passed the House of Representatives, but in the Senate, you had 16, all 50 Republicans voted against it in the Senate, including 16 sitting Republicans who voted to reauthorize the 1965 Voting Rights Act in 2005, 2006. And I was just wanting to get your expert opinion on what we could have done to try to get that forced through the Senate. It did pass the House of Representatives.
Right. So
and no Republicans in the House voted for it either. Let me just say that too.
Right. So on the first question, I think what the Democrats should have done is very similar to what the Republicans are about to do, and used federal power to standardize voting across the nation, right? So yes, I agree. Michigan actually did a pretty good job of not retrenching on voting rights because it had 3 Democratic control of all 3 branches of its government, right? But that was not true all around the country. And even though it's true, even though some states are better than other states, I think part of the problem when you really get into like voter mobilization, right, is that it is confusing because how you vote changes radically depending on where you live. So you can't have a nationally targeted, campaign around just the nuts and bolts of getting people to the polls because it's wildly different everywhere else, depending on where you live, right? So like I am an expert on how you vote in New York City, right? How you vote in New York State. I know that very well. I have no idea how you vote in Jersey, right? It's because it's completely freaking different, right? And so there was no way for me as a national commentator or whatever to really make to do the bullhorning of, well, guys in New Jersey, what you got to do is because I don't know. I mean, I educated myself, but you know what I mean? Like I can't make broad statements because we don't use federal power. What the Republicans are about to do, I forget which Lara whatever, one of them. I think I think it's Lara Trump. I get them, I don't want to Morpheus. Right. Whatever. One of the Laras was talking about how they want to use federal power to institute voter ID and standardize elections and limit early voting and do all these things from the federal seat of government. Now, when Democrats try to do it, the Republicans scream about the 10th Amendment, but I promise you they won't be talking about the 10th Amendment and federalism when Republicans try to do it, right? So those are the kinds of federalized laws that could have made voting easier, not just for Michigan, but for everybody, and then made it easier for you to explain to people in Michigan, in Arizona, in Nevada, in Florida, how you actually vote, right? The John Lewis Voting Rights, and that dovetails into the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which was one of the federal laws that could have done that, right? And so when you ask me what else could we have done to make sure that law passed over the objection of Manchin and Sinema, this is where I say, and you can check the tape, I said this in real time, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act was a shut down the government bill. You don't pass anything until after what happened on January 6th. After the attack on democracy, that is the first bill you pass, and you don't let the government function until it passes it. That is what I would have done. I know Inflation Reduction Act, this. I know that we had other priorities. No, that was the first and only priority. That should have been the first priority and only priority of the Biden administration, because you do not have a democracy without the franchise. You just don't, as we're seeing right now. And the political uplift to get the John Lewis Voting Rights Act done was in the aftermath of January 6th. You shut down the government. You don't let anything else come across the floor until they pass that. You attach that bill to every single budget that you dare to try to pass. You should be able to.
Yes, you do exactly what Congressman Powell, Adam Clayton Powell, did when it was called the Powell Amendment. He attached it to every bill. But again, this is the difference between. This is what I keep saying. If you want to compare parties, Democrats are playing by a set of traditional, accepted rules. Republicans are playing a game where there are no rules.
Right, right.
And their whole deal is, we don't care. We will be as ruthless as we need to be because we are trying to, one, get power, use power to cement power. So
the analogy that I've always made, Roland, is that it's like they're playing chess, right? The Democrats are playing chess, and they make a move, and the Democrats say, checkmate, Republicans, checkmate. And Republicans knock over the chess people and shove the chessboard up a Democrat's ass and says, checkmate that.
Yep.
And Democrats are like, technically you lost. And the Republicans are like, don't care. You have a chessboard up your ass now.
Yeah. I mean, and so people need, no, but he's right. I mean, look, we can sit here and laugh about it, but he's right. I mean, and that is when you get power, you exercise power.
You use power. Yep.
I mean, it's just simple as that. I mean, I don't care. Listen, folks, I've covered City Hall, county government, state, federal. I've talked to officials at every single level. This ain't even it. Even we're talking in organizations. When you have power, you use power. They're playing nice. This is not a moment where you play nice. No, right. This is a moment where you have to understand that the actions today have generational impact. And so when Elie says you go to the mat, yes, you go to the mat. And you have to understand.
One of the reasons why Trump is popular, like people forget this, like it's one of the reasons why they like him, because Trump is not an effective leader, right? He's not an effective executive. He has no ability to bend the legislature to his will, but he uses power maximally. And people see it. People see him doing essentially everything he can, fair or unfair, to get what he wants through, right? Doesn't have to be legal, doesn't have to be traditional, doesn't have to be normal. He does it anyway. He's not effective. They're not good plans, but people see him, and people are going to see it again, right? Because after going through 4 years of Merrick Garland and what he could do and what he couldn't do, and oh my God, and maybe we should write a letter and all that. Watch what happens when Stephen Miller is in charge of the Justice Department. Watch what happens when Mike Davis is in charge of the Justice Department. Watch what happens when Trey Gowdy is in charge of the Justice Department. I promise you, they won't be sending mean letters.
No.
Right?
No. And you can get, and let's be real clear, the Civil Rights Division will be gutted. You will have no patterns and practices investigations of police departments.
Roland, I hope it's gutted. I hope it's good. The best case scenario, is that it's gutted. The worst case scenario, the scenario that is outlined in Project 2025, is that it is weaponized against black people. Project 2025 talks about changing the Civil Rights Division to suing organizations and institutions that, quote, use DEI as racist against white folks. The civil rights battle for Project 2025 is racism against white people, and they want to use the Civil Rights Division to do that. So it's like, I hope it's gutted, because it's going to be real bad when Ben Shapiro is the one running it, right?
Absolutely. Elie Mystal, we appreciate it, Elie. Get some rest, rejuvenate, relax. A bunch of folks called me today and they were like, man, Chicken, how you feeling? Man, you were really working in the campaign. I said, listen, let me explain something to you. I said, first of all, I'm fine. They said, well, what are you focused on? I said, I'm focused on losing 20 pounds from the campaign. I said, because you couldn't work out, you couldn't eat, you were going so hard. So I said, that's the first thing. I said, getting at least 7 hours of sleep. I said, but let's be real clear. I said, I will be part of the resistance. I very much understand what's coming down, and don't think for a second that I'm walking off the battlefield, because that ain't happening. It ain't happening. Elie, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, Roland. Thanks a lot, guys.
Support the African History Network. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. $, the AHN show through Cash App. When you scroll down the page, you can support us. This helps us keep doing the research, pay the bills, pay when I have to travel, because I'm in Washington, D.C. right now. I was on Roland Martin's live election night coverage last night. And we were on from 7:30 a.m., 7:30 p.m. to about 3 a.m. Wednesday morning. $ the AHN show, SHOW. These other ones are fake African History Network Cash App accounts. I'm still trying to get shut down. If you learned anything today, if you like this type of information, you can support us, $5, $10, $15, $25, $100, whatever it is that supports us. Here's the QR code here. Here's the link for PayPal, and register for my new 12-week online history class. Starts up Saturday, November 9th, 2024, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Ancient Kemet, one of the original names for Egypt, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade. We deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. And you can download the lesson plan right here. I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips, over 200 slides, 800 to 100 articles we reference. I'll show you everything on the screen, even the excerpts of books, so you don't have to buy any of these books to follow along in class, but you can if you want to. And we have show you extras with interviews I've done from historians like Professor Janie Small, Professor Kabahai Waka Kamene, Tony Browder, Runoko Rashidi, and more. All right, remember, right now is correct. Wrong behavior is not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you next time. Peace. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to get through this. These next 4 years are going to be hard. The House of Representatives, Democrats may take the House if we'll see they're still tabulating. If they take the House, Hakeem Jeffries is going to be the Speaker of the House of Representatives, first African-American Speaker of the House of Representatives. That means Democrats will be able to block bills that harmful bills that Republicans are trying to get passed and signed into law, because they can block them in the House. But this is a devastating result. And a lot of these people that think Trump is going to be good for the economy, he's going to tank the economy. He's going to tank the economy because he didn't build a good economy the last time. Right now,